Hello and welcome to Politics 101, the debate show where we help you understand what is going on in this world of politics. Each week we invite a group of panellists with different views into the studio to debate questions asked by you. This week we're focusing on Britain's impending exit from the European Union. We'll be finding out exactly what it is, why it's happened, and debating whether leave really is the right choice. You can tweet in your questions by using the hashtag Politics101, and you can also comment on our Facebook page. So let's start with the basics. What is Brexit? Let's break it down for you.
Brexit is an abbreviation for the term Britain exit, which refers to the referendum that was held in June 2016. This was to decide whether the UK would remain in the EU, but by its 52%, it was decided that Britain would leave. Now, let's take a look at some of the facts. 72% of people who turned out to cast their vote, which was more than the general election in the previous year. 75% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted to remain in the EU, but were outvoted by the older generation. Now back to you in the studio.
Know what Brexit is, it's time to meet our panellists. First up, we're joined by two people who voted leave. Seamus Martin, the former Vote Leave referendum campaign coordinator in Salford and Eccles, and Chris Barnes, the chairman of the City of Salford UKIP branch. We're also joined by two people who voted Remain, Jack Bowden, politics student and Remain campaigner, and Matthew Torbett, the independent parliamentary candidate in Cheadle in 2015. So thanks to you all for joining us today. Now let's dig deeper into why you all voted the way you did. We'll do this through our Politics 101 30-second pitch. You each have 30 seconds to state your views on Brexit. So Seamus, let's start with you. Your 30 seconds starts now.
I believe that every country, including this one, should have full control over its own laws, its own borders and its own immigration policy. So do the 17.4 million other people who voted leave. Being in the EU utterly undermines this. More people voted for leave than for anything else in British political history. So let's get on with it and leave now. A clean Brexit, and the sooner the better. Okay, and thank you, Seamus. Next we'll have Jack, and your 30 seconds begins now.
Well, entering the referendum, I didn't see that there would be any benefits to us leaving. Admittedly, I'm still a young guy, so I haven't seen anything outside of the EU. And what we've seen since the actual result is that nothing has been done to disprove the feelings I had initially. We keep talking about an imminent Brexit. However, it's being said in recent days that it's going to take over 2 years, and that doesn't seem very imminent to me.
Okay, and thank you, Jack. Next up we have Chris, and your 30 seconds starts now.
The reason I voted to leave the European Union is I don't want to be a united European. If I wanted something like that, I'd emigrate to the United States of America. I want Britain to be independent, to make its own rules, make its own laws, to trade fairly throughout the world. I don't want to be restricted by bureaucrats in Brussels. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And next we have Matthew, and your 30 seconds starts now.
I voted Remain, albeit reluctantly. It was very much a Pepsi or Coke choice for me. There wasn't any fresh orange juice that was non-GMO available. I was deeply sceptical as to why we were being asked as a public to vote on this matter rather than other things in the past. I think we may well have been easier rather than to have a referendum on the EU, to have a referendum on immigration, because that was what the campaign was largely about. Both debates were very anti-intellectual and not really very concerned with actual facts.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. So before we begin the debate, let's find out how some of you at home voted in the referendum and why.
I voted leave because I think we've got an immigration problem.
A Remainer, big sort of fan of the Remain camp.
And I think we should have stayed in the EU.
Voted leave so that we can make our own laws and we are free to trade with whoever it is that we want to trade with.
So when I woke up that morning, like many other people in the country, couldn't believe it.
So they were some of your views. Let's see if they've changed by the end of the show. You can have your say at home by tweeting questions to #politics101. You can also vote Remain or Leave in our own referendum Twitter poll. So far, we've had a great response from you. So hi to Kate, who's asking, how will leaving the EU affect our relationship with other countries? So what do we all think?
Well, I think our relations with other countries, including those in the EU, will actually greatly improve. The EU wants ever closer union. We don't. We've always been annoying them with demands for exemptions, opt-outs, and once we finally actually leave the EU, we will no longer be the fly in their ointment, and we can, be good friends and good neighbours again. And as a wholly independent country, we'll be free to go out and rekindle our old friendships with countries in the Commonwealth and beyond as well.
Well, you're saying about other countries. What about the people in our own country? After the result, I saw a lot of vitriolic language towards, I guess you could say, foreign people. There was one time, for example, in a takeaway where a bunch of gentlemen, they were shouting at the gentleman working in there. They were saying, oh, you're going to be out soon.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely disgraceful. And, you cannot judge the integrity of the whole Leave campaign, the whole Leave movement, by the boorish and objectionable behaviour.
I'm not judging the entire campaign based on that. I'm just saying that it has released a lot of anger from a group of people.
It's not released. It's always been there. Unfortunately, we have bigots and racists throughout this country. No matter what colour you are, we have bigots and racists from all sides. And unfortunately, you may think that it's the first time you've heard it. You'll have heard it long before it was brought to the political table with a referendum. It's been going on since I was a child. I find it disgusting that anybody should be judged on colour, creed, sexuality or religion. But I still hear it day to day, and I've heard it. I'm 61 years old, and I've heard it since the day I could understand things. Like when we had people come into school that were different, they were done. It's unfortunate that we have these people, but let's face it, we have a better educated society and we can drown these people out as we go along.
Thank you all for your contribution there. We've also had another tweet which we've received from Sam. He states, claims were made that the NHS would gain £350 million as a result of leaving the EU. So guys, do we think this was a false promise to gain votes?
It was a false promise. Those that backed it were largely ideologically opposed to the whole point of a universal healthcare that's free at the point of use. I didn't hear one single person on the Leave campaign, either of the Leave campaigns, rebut the figure and where it was going to go. They were sort of happy to go along with it, and because obviously the NHS in this country is the closest thing that some people have to a religion. It's held very, very dear to people's hearts, and very much is a vote winner.
Many of us on the Leave side were very annoyed about this figure. The 350 million is a gross figure. It would have been much wiser to quote the net figure, which is something closer to £200 million a week. Then we could have had a debate about the real issue rather than about the integrity of the figure and the campaign. It was Conservative Party people who pushed that figure. Others were much more circumspect. The fundamental issue, however, is that we spend far more, give far more money to the EU every week than we receive, and the government of the day, once we leave, will be free to spend that money on the NHS, on social housing, on whatever it chooses to do so, and that's the real issue.
I think the likelihood is it'll be tax breaks for the rich, because we have a majority Conservative government that don't, are never going to look at social care and social housing.
But I think surely it's up to the likes of us on both sides of this debate to see that doesn't happen. We all have social consciences around these tables. We need to fight for the money to be spent on the homeless, on social care, on housing, on healthcare. Let's fight for it. Let's not just sit back and say, oh, the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer. Let's fight for the equality in this country.
I agree. The problem being, Seamus has just said that there's a lot of people that we were very annoyed with the figure that was put forward, and it was majority Conservative people that were doing it. Where were you all then? Why wasn't anybody shouting, saying, well, listen, this isn't right, this? Everybody was more than happy to let the NHS figure go along with it.
There were plenty
Okay,
of people, it's just that they weren't in the official campaign that got the government funding.
Seamus, I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there. So while our panellists have been debating, we've had a huge amount of you getting in touch on our Twitter. So let's take a look at what you've been saying. We have had Lisa. She says, finally, I understand more about Brexit. Still not sure why we left though, #politics101. So I'm glad we've helped you out there, Lisa. You've also been voting on our ongoing Twitter poll, and I can now reveal that so far 10,492 of you would vote Remain and 9,812 would vote Leave if we had another referendum. So that's nearly it for today, and as always, to finish off our debate, each guest will now have the chance to sum up their overall opinion on Brexit in one sentence. So let's start with you really quickly, please, Seamus.
A clear majority voted for Leave. Let's get on with it. A clean, quick, hard Brexit.
Matthew?
Democracy has to be listened to, but at the same time, do we go through with one of the biggest acts of self-harm this country's gone through or not? Is it easier to hold your hands up and say, let's look?
Chris?
We've had the vote. We've had lots of debates about it. Let's move forward. Let's have a Brexit means Brexit, to use that lady's terms.
Okay, and finally, Jack.
It's a mess. We know it. We've seen it. But I guess we just have to deal with it now.
Brilliant. Well, that's it for Politics 101. Hopefully we've helped you understand what Brexit is, as well as helping you to make up your mind whether leaving the EU is the right choice or not. So thank you to all our panellists for joining us today. You can tune in next week where we tackle Trump. Goodbye.